I'm Mike DeCourcy, senior writer for Sporting News, and welcome to the 2021 Sporting News NBA Mock Draft. We are going to take you through the entire first round, all 30 picks, with special attention paid to the lottery portion of the draft. We'll start with the number one overall selection being made by the Detroit Pistons. Now, the Pistons are now under the charge of general manager Troy Weaver, and if there is anybody in the NBA who understands the value of a bigger player who can create and score, it is Troy Weaver, former assistant coach at Syracuse, who was the primary recruiter of the great Carmelo Anthony. So I have to believe that Troy Weaver will be all in on selecting Cade Cunningham from Oklahoma State, a 6'8 player who can play point guard, shooting guard, small forward. I think he'll operate mostly in the NBA as a point guard, but in order to do that, he's going to have to do a better job with his ball handling. But overall, he is an excellent prospect, and I think the Pistons will be very eager to select him, even though there has been a lot of discussion about the possibility of them moving that pick. The number 2 selection belongs to the Houston Rockets, who basically have been stripped to the bolts. They are a much different franchise than they were over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, and they are starting over. And in the NBA now, to start over, probably the first thing you're going to want in your program is a guy who can score from the perimeter. And Jalen Green fits that ideally. He is long, he is tall, he can shoot. Remember, his numbers compared to other players who are in this draft, his numbers are from NBA range. He played for the G League Ignite program for the last year. And the numbers he came up with were from the G League bubble, from the NBA three-point distance, which is a longer distance than college or international. So I think his numbers are impressive. I think his body of work is impressive. I think he's got great physical qualities and will be a terrific selection for the Houston Rockets. With the third pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers, this is their dream scenario. They really could use the opportunity to select a big man like Evan Mobley from Southern California. Evan was a second-team All-American for Sporting News, had a great freshman year, did a terrific job in the NCAA tournament, making the Elite Eight with the Trojans. He's a spectacular basketball player, especially on the defensive end. Offensively, he's got the big man game that you want in the 21st century. He can shoot the basketball. He can move. He can defend on the perimeter. He's everything you want except physically powerful. Why is he not physically powerful? Because he's only 19 years old. Give him some time to be a full-time basketball player and watch his body grow and watch his body of work grow. If he could be available to the Cavs at that third pick, they could make a serious leap within the next couple of years forward. I really believe he has outstanding ability. Number 4 overall, this is where it gets kind of tricky on what might happen. The Toronto Raptors have that pick. With the way they are set up, Jonathan Kuminga, another G League Ignite player, would seem to fit what they do. Do I think he's the 4th best overall prospect? Hey, he could be the 1st best if he learns how to shoot the basketball. He's very inconsistent as a shooter, very inconsistent as a decision maker, but he's also an A++ in terms of dynamism. A guy who comes into the league with the length and the ability to move and to fly like very few. Remember, the NBA athletes are some of the best in the world, and Jonathan Kuminga would be one of the best at the NBA level. That's how dynamic he is. So if he learns how to shoot and score, right now he's very spotty in both of those areas. But if he learns and masters those arts, he could be a tremendous NBA player. So maybe the highest upside player on this board. I think Toronto would take him because of that opportunity. The number 5 overall pick belongs to the Orlando Magic. And the Magic are another franchise that is at the beginning of a rebuilding phase. So someone that is rebuilding would certainly like a foundational player who is solid as a rock. And here's the great news. The Magic might be in the position to draft, and certainly are in this mock draft, a player who is both solid and spectacular, and that is Jalen Suggs, the point guard from Gonzaga. Jalen is a dynamite ball handler, has terrific vision, can become a high-level passer, needs to improve his shooting touch a little, but A-plus dynamism, a player who really understands how to win. The way he took over the game in the West Coast Conference Championship against BYU when the Zags were down, needed the win to stay undefeated for the regular season, completely took over the game. That's a guy I want on my side. And let's not even mention that spectacular half-court shot he made to beat UCLA in overtime of the NCAA Final Four. So a player that the Magic will really like having in their program. The number 6 overall pick belongs to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that's not really a surprise because they own just about every pick in just about every NBA draft between now and the 22nd century. They have made so many deals to accumulate so many assets. But this could be the highest they pick in the NBA draft if they do it right. What does that entail? Well, it wouldn't hurt to add a player like Scotty Barnes out of Florida State. He can play the point, he can play on the wing, he can defend multiple positions, would be an excellent selection to help move the Thunder back toward championship contention. At number 7 overall, it's the Golden State Warriors. Of all the teams that are in the lottery, the Warriors are the ones that are most certainly in win-now mode. They have a superstar guard in Steph Curry, a superstar role player in Draymond Green, and hopefully a super shooter, Klay Thompson, coming strong off an injury that cost him the entire 2021 season. What could make this team better would be someone like Davion Mitchell, the Baylor point guard, who led the Bears to the NCAA championship and who can add some bite to the perimeter defense of the Warriors. As we talked about earlier, the Orlando Magic, who own the 8th overall selection in addition to that 5th pick they exercised earlier, could use a little bit of everything, maybe even a lot of everything. But this is an opportunity for them to complete a very promising young backcourt by adding Keon Johnson out of Tennessee to Jalen Suggs, who was selected earlier. Johnson is a physically powerful guard, can be a very strong defender at the NBA level, an accurate deep shooter, not a busy deep shooter. That's a little bit of a concern. Needs to be able to show that when he's open, they can count on him. But he'll be a very strong pick for the Magic at number 8 overall. The 9th selection will be made by the Sacramento Kings. Usually when the Kings are in the lottery, and they're usually in the lottery, they're selecting closer to 1, 2, or 3, but they've made some very sound personnel decisions over the past few years, bringing in players like Buddy Hield, some nice draft picks like De'Aaron Fox, and they've become a stronger team, but they haven't become a stronger team. And what I mean by that is they need the physicality that a player like Alperen Sengun can bring to them. Sengun played in the Turkish Pro League as a teenager, and he played like a grown man. He'll bring the baseline strength that the Kings need to make the next step toward being significant. The New Orleans Pelicans have got to find someone who can help Zion Williamson see the inside of the NBA playoffs a bit more often, or they're not going to see Zion in a Pels uniform for very long. The problem is that player probably isn't in this draft. Probably. But if James Bouknight can start making deep shots at a reasonable rate, he had a very streaky season at Connecticut in 2020-21, but he had a very strong pre-draft process that suggests he can be a shooter and suggests he can help the Pels next season. At number 11, the Charlotte Hornets could use someone like Kai Jones out of Texas. Someone like Kai Jones. Someone maybe a little bit more physically powerful, a little more developed as a player, a little bit more experienced in his past. But they don't have the opportunity to do that. They're going to have to settle for Kai Jones and hope he comes along as a player. He has a very, very high upside. Someone who can fly like him, maybe an upside only he can reach. It's a very rare visit to the lottery for the San Antonio Spurs, who picked 12th. How did they get here? Well, for one, Tim Duncan retired. But more to the point, they shot the ball terribly. They were 30th in the league. Yes, there are 30 teams in three-pointers made per game, and they were 22nd in three-point percentage. We can't fix all of that, but we can fix a good bit of it by having them draft Corey Kispert, the best three-point shooter in college basketball last season, absolutely dynamite from three-point range, helped the Zags to the national championship game, first-team All-American, highly productive, faded a little bit at the end of the season, did not have his best games at the Elite Eight, Final Four, and championship game level, but a tremendous shooter, would be an outstanding addition to the San Antonio Spurs. NBA draft night has not been a happy occasion for the Indiana Pacers of late. They've not gotten any high picks, and the mid-level picks they've earned, they haven't spent wisely. They're the ones who selected TJ Leaf over John Collins, who chose Aaron Holiday over Jalen Brunson, and most recently, Goga Batazde over Brandon Clark. What will they do this time? I say they go for Franz Wagner out of Michigan. Franz is big, dynamic, an excellent rebounder for a wing, a player who gets the job done defensively, who'll go for loose balls, does all the little things. A very strong finisher at the rim. What he does not do well, he does not shoot it well. He has good mechanics, but he's not been an accurate shooter. If he can learn to be an accurate shooter, he can be a very productive NBA wing. The Golden State Warriors are the second team with multiple selections in the lottery. And that does make them a candidate to move around a bit. But let's say they stay here and make the pick. In that case, the pick to make is Chris Duarte out of Oregon. 6'6", can play multiple positions on the perimeter, can defend multiple positions on the perimeter, and very capable three-point shooter, made significant advances from the 2020 season to the 2021 season as a deep shooter, made Oregon a threat in the NCAA tournament. I believe he can help Golden State off the bench in time as a deep shooter, and they are a team that can afford to take a 24-year-old rookie. Now that we're through with the lottery portion of the draft, let's just look at some of the more interesting picks that will happen on the way to the end of the first round. The New York Knicks, who did such a great job in making the playoffs this past season, have 2 of the next 7 picks. And they could do a lot to help their backcourt depth by drafting Trey Mann out of Florida. Big point guard, plays somewhat in the vein of Derrick Rose, not at Rose's level, or he wouldn't be going 19th overall, but a player who has a lot fewer miles on his wheels than Derrick Rose and could really help the Knicks. At number 21, how about Isaiah Jackson? What could be more natural than another Knicks player coming out of Kentucky? Emmanuel Quickley, Julius Randle, they've done a lot of good for this Knicks franchise, the Kentucky Wildcats have. And Isaiah Jackson, very dynamic young forward, a lot to learn about the game, but a great shot blocker and a developing shooter could be a real factor for them in years to come. The Houston Rockets have back-to-back selections at number 23 and number 24. And they could do a lot worse than to stay in-state and select Jared Butler out of Baylor. Another NCAA champion in this draft, a terrific shooter, defends exceedingly well, can play as a smaller shooting guard in the Emmanuel Quickley mode, or play as a point guard. I think he'll be a fine NBA player and a steal at number 23. Number 24, how about a developmental project? Greg Brown, he was a top 10 player coming out of high school in the Austin area, had a solid freshman year at Texas in a roster that was probably a bit too stacked for him to get the kind of minutes he needed to really blossom. But he could do that at the NBA level, and the Rockets have plenty of minutes available to spend on him. The last pick we'll look closely at, number 27 overall. The Brooklyn Nets have the opportunity to make the steal of the draft, Sharif Cooper, a point guard with incredible ball handling and passing abilities. They do not make many like Sharif Cooper, and if they made Sharif Cooper like they made Steph Curry, Sharif Cooper would be second or third in this draft. He is that great in terms of his ability to see the floor, to open the floor with his ball handling skill. What he does not do, and that's why I brought Curry into the conversation, he has not been a proficient deep shooter. He's been a poor deep shooter. If you trust that you can make him into a three-point marksman, you could have an all-star level point guard on your hands, certainly worth a gamble this deep in the draft. So that's our look at the 2021 NBA draft. In this sport, there aren't always a lot of obvious answers available in the draft, and even fewer, perhaps, immediate answers. But all of the best players go through here, from LeBron James to Anthony Davis, even double-digit picks like Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell. We hope you enjoyed this. that you'll follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube, and that you'll share some comments as well. Thanks for watching.